Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the MTS Public Security Committee meeting. It is currently 9:04 a.m. and I will call this meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Members, please make your selections on the tablets. Chair, we have a quorum with 5 members present and 2 members absent.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's go to our first order of business, which is non-agenda public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda today. Do we have any members of the public who wish to comment?
No public comment, Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. We will go to the approval of the minutes from May 30th. So we're, as always, we ask to approve the minutes of this meeting. Do we have any comments from the public on the minutes?
No public comment.
Okay, and if no public comment, I will entertain a motion at this time. Okay, somebody has to second. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. I guess we'll turn to our voting machine for this. Okay, yeah, it's on there. Please vote.
Members, please make your selections on the tablets. Chair passes unanimously with 5 approved.
Thank you very much. Okay. Let us go now to the meat of our meeting, which is, we're starting with item number 4, and this is the administrative penalty program under Public Utility Code section 99580, and Ms. Karen Landers will be presenting. Thank you.
Good morning. So today's item is a follow-up from the May Public Security Committee meeting where you all directed staff to prepare a plan to potentially change from MTS's current criminal administrative hybrid fair enforcement model to a fully administrative enforcement model. And there is a Public Utilities Code section that we'll refer to a lot, but it's section 99580 that sets out the parameters if an agency wants to do this, what that program needs to include. So what would happen next is that, once we prepare that transition plan, the Public Security Committee would review it and then determine if recommendation should be forwarded to the board to change our enforcement model. Timing wise, we're still in the what would that plan look like? And today, what we determined is we need your direction on what the different parameters of the program would be before we can do some of the other planning steps. So timing, we're going to get direction from you all today, then we'll go out and do more work. I'll detail that, but I would anticipate this would come back in March at whatever, we don't have your schedule yet for next year, but whatever that first kind of March meeting would be, with a fuller plan for you to then potentially take action on a recommendation. So today it's just, you wanted us to look at and scope a plan. And so we need help on what you want included in that. So as we looked through this, there's 4 basic elements to the transition plan. The first one, which is going to be the focus of today's discussion, is establishing the scope of the program. So that's the basic rules that you want it to include. It's the penalty amount. It's what eligible violations could use that program. It's what disqualifying factors might say, no, you don't get to do administrative penalty. And then similar along that vein, is there some consequence for multiple violations? Once we have that, then we would get to drafting a draft ordinance and identifying other policy changes that we would need to put into place to implement. We'd also be able to better establish a scope and cost estimate for the contracts that are needed to implement the transition plan. And then we would have to then put in place what are those transition activities and implementation of what's the steps that we need to have everything in place here before we can turn that program on. So the discussion today is really about the scope of the program. And so I'll walk through each of these, but, in general, its penalty amount, the section 99580 allows it to be up to $125 after all late fees, for a first and second offense. If it's a third offense, it lets that go up to $200 or third plus offense. Eligible violations, it has a list of violations that you can include. So it's not only fare evasion. So one of the things we'll walk through is, do you want to include some other types of violations in this penalty program? And then, we don't have to allow every single violation to go into it. So we wanted to go over if there were some rules on disqualifying factors, which we currently have as part of our diversion program. There's certain, if you did something in addition to fare evasion, then you don't get to do diversion. So going through that issue with you all. And then, it's a little bit more complicated of, if we have multiple violations within a specified time, other agencies have kind of different rules that apply to that. So we wanted to go through that issue with you all. So the penalty amount, right now under the 99580, as I said, the maximum for a first and second offense is $125. Right now by our statute, that if we don't do 99580, our individual penalty, the maximum is $75, but then that goes to court and the court adds its own fees on top of that. In practice, it actually, under our statute, it says it's $500 for a third and further offenses. But in practice, we don't issue escalating citations. I don't think that we ever have. The diversion program does, though, offer an off-ramp from court. And so a $25 for all violations or a 3-hour community service option. And then since February, we've had a one-time waiver in place for everyone's first violation. Looking at what some of the other programs do is LA Metro is $75 for the first offense, but they drop that down to $50 if you do this online traffic school attendance that they've created, like a program to talk about the consequences of like fare evasion and how that impacts the agency. They also offer community service of 5 hours. And then they do have escalating fines if you don't pay it by the within, I think it's 30 days. Then it goes up $25. And then for the second missed deadline, it goes up to $125. San Francisco Muni is $130 for first offense. I know that doesn't make sense since the 99580 says it's maximum $125. We can't figure out why that's different, except that they started their program before the most recent versions of 99580. So I think they might be grandfathered in. They do have a community service option that allows you, for every hour of community service you do, you can reduce your fine by $20. And then they go up for missed deadlines, up to 158 for the first missed deadline, 211 for the second missed deadline, and $261 if it's sent to collections. And then BART has a $75, first and second offense. For minors, they have a $55 first and second offense. They offer 5 hours of community service. And then if you miss a deadline, they increase it up to $95. And I'll come back at the end during the discussion to kind of get your feedback on each of these. So then the eligible violations. Right now, our diversion program is only fare evasion, or if you miss the misuse of a pass, like if only. But the 99580 has a list of 13 things that you can include in your program. I've highlighted 3 of them that I wanted to kind of tag that I'm not sure we'd want to include. The other ones seem routine, minor things that if the board or the committee wanted to expand this beyond fare evasion, they seem to fit within that same type of classification. So it's fare evasion, just not having a fare, misuse of a pass to evade a fare. It is unreasonably loud sound equipment, boisterous behavior, those smoking, eating, drinking when prohibited. I'm going to skip over my 3 red ones. I'll go back to them. Willful disturbance, boisterous or unruly behavior, urinating or defecating. It excludes the inability to comply because of disability, age, or medical condition. Willful blocking of free movement of another, but it expressly excludes First Amendment activities, skateboarding, roller skating, biking when prohibited, unauthorized use of a discount ticket, or selling goods on MTS property without express permission of MTS. So those, to me, fall into similar bucket, those conduct things. That's, you may differ in your opinion, but the three that I wanted to call out is, one of them is expectorating, which I had to look up. I didn't know that it was spitting, but it is spitting, and it is, in this situation, it is spitting in a facility or on a vehicle. And so maybe that's not that big of a deal, but I just wanted to highlight it because spitting on a person is a different thing. And that is considered assault. It's actually a problem that we have. We often get people spitting on our bus operators, and we consider that a very serious violation. And we try very hard to work with STPD and the city attorney's office to prosecute those. So if we may potentially want to exclude spitting from this list, but I just want it to be clear, even if it is included in this list, that would not apply if somebody spit on a person. So it's not allowed under this statute. And I also think that, for us protecting our employees, it's something that we should, consider a criminal violation. The other one is carrying explosive or acid, flammable liquid, or toxic or hazardous material. And I will say I haven't done deep research to understand exactly what they're talking about, but on its face, that to me seems like it could exclude very serious, like, public safety violations. This is not something that we normally cite. So I think if we cited it, it would be because somebody has something that is really dangerous, or they're using it to threaten someone. And so I would worry potentially if we left that in there, that would create an argument from someone who's committing a much more serious crime, that it cannot be prosecuted criminally. So just something to think about. I can do a little bit more research. I mean, if somebody just has like a normal bottle of, cleaning equipment in a grocery bag, that's not something we would ever cite for, So I don't think that this is a big problem where people are getting criminally cited for routine use of, like, technically hazardous material, but not in the context of how they're having it being hazardous. And then the final one is failing to yield to seating reserved for elderly or disabled person. And the reason that I highlighted this is that several years ago, we had some presentations to the board about our cart and stroller policies and use of disabled seating. And that was an area that we do get a lot of complaints that the disabled seating is full and people thinking that it's being misused. And it is technically a criminal violation to fail to yield that if you are not disabled. Now, in practice, we don't really cite that because people can have non-visible disabilities that would entitle them to use the spaces. But I think that the consensus of the board throughout those discussions was wanting to remind people that this is a criminal violation and kind of appealing to them that if they do not truly qualify, they shouldn't sit there, or if somebody gets on that clearly appears to qualify, that they would yield those seats to them. And so we have signage all throughout our buses and on our website that tell people that that they can be criminally cited if they sit there when they're not allowed to. So if we included this, then potentially we also would have to go redo some of that signage, and the impact of that signage, I think, could be diminished. So I just wanted you to be aware of that while you'd consider if that's one that we would want to have an administrative penalty. Looking at other agencies, LA Metro just includes the entire list from the Public Utilities Code. San Francisco Muni, it looks like it's only fair, but we really can't tell from their system. And then BART is only fair evasion. So disqualifying factors. This is not something that's referenced in 99580. It's not prohibited or required, but our current program for our diversion program says that if when you're issued your citation for fair evasion, you also are issued a violation for something else, then the whole violation is not eligible for diversion. So the question is, would we want that same rule to apply here? So you're not separating out the circumstances and the context of the situation, and you send the one like purely criminal to the court, And then the fare evasion goes to our admin program, but there's then 2 proceedings that are running. Instead, it would be, they would just both go to court. The looking at and seeing if there were other agencies that had disqualifying factors, none of them seem to quite do what we do in our diversion program. In LA Metro, if you have more than 3 citations, then you're subject to an exclusion order. Those are really hard to implement. They're pretty time consuming. They require people to know who the person is to enforce it, but that is their technical rule. SF Muni, we couldn't find any information about exclusionary rules that they may have. And then at BART, if you get 3 or more citations within 12 months, then you're not eligible for administrative cite. And if you give false information or obstruct the issuance of a citation, then you're also not eligible. So then the final issue is consequences for unresolved multiple violations, or unresolved or multiple violations. So you just ignore your citation, do nothing, or you have multiple violations. Again, this is not an issue that's specifically addressed in section 99580. What we do currently under our hybrid program is that if after 120 days, there's no action, so they do nothing to respond to it, to participate in diversion, then the citation is sent to court for resolution. We will work with people on an ad hoc basis to allow late participation and request dismissal from the court. So but there's a certain point of, if we haven't heard from you, then it goes to court. Occasionally people, only when they start getting notices from court, will they come back to MTS to see if they can participate in diversion. And we allow that whenever it's possible. If we can do it before the court hearing. We actually recently worked with someone where they didn't come talk to us, or there was a snafu and their court hearing went forward. And we reached out to our contacts at the public defender's office that do the homeless court program, and they're going to do the post court, waive those fines, and dismiss that court action. So we have a lot of tools in place that we, under our current program, try to work with people, because really we just want them to ultimately, hopefully the next time, pay their fare. At LA Metro, if you have 3 or more citations, then you're subject to an exclusion order. It could be a 30-day, a 60-day, or a 90-day, depending on the number of violations. They don't do collections for fare violations. If you don't pay your fine, they haven't told, there's not a specific policy reason they identified. From our kind of ad hoc conversations with them over the years, it seems like it's more related to the difficulty of collecting, that they don't normally have proper information about the person in order for a collections agency to go out and actually collect it. And so they've just foregone that. They limit that to their parking violations because they can attach that to a DMV registration. Notwithstanding LA Metro's experience, San Francisco Muni, unresolved citations are sent to collections or the franchise tax board. And then for BART, 3 or more citations are subject to a criminal citation, so you no longer can do admin. And then unresolved citations get sent to collections or FTP. And we haven't had enough time to really talk to the people that specifically do collections at San Francisco and BART to understand what their actual experience is. So once we set those rules of the diversion program, then the next steps that we would start working on is we would prepare a draft ordinance, and then we'd also identify other policy changes that we might be necessary to implement the program. So we would kind of figure out what policy documents need to be drafted, and if we need further feedback from the committee or the board on what goes into those policies. Also next is further identifying the contracts needed to implement the transition and the program. We have identified that we would need an administrative fare collection vendor. They would send out all of the hearing and late fee notices. They would handle collections of the fines, either before, just somebody wants to pay, they would take those payments, or we would potentially look at then, if there's an unresolved citation, the next stage of collections. Citation equipment and handheld devices, the equipment that we have now is not sufficient for this type of program. And so we would have to create the scope and technical specification of what we needed in that citation equipment and handheld device based on the rules of the program that the agency sets. And then that would allow us to kind of figure out what's the cost of that? How hard is that? Is there something out there on the market, or is it something that has to be custom? We'd also need contracts for hearing officers, hearing locations in person and virtual. It's not quite clear if you need to have both in person or virtual, but for kind of access to justice issues, maybe not everyone has access to a virtual hearing. And so we might need to have, I think we would probably need to have an in-person location that could have hearings, as needed. And then additional transition activities, we would need to hire a project manager. Even if we're going to have some vendors that are going to do some of this, we need someone in-house that oversees the program. And I don't see there being anyone in-house that could add this to their duties, either that has the kind of requisite skills and experience to run a program like this, and then also just the time and capacity in their schedule. So we think that would require one internal MTS employee, even if the rest of it is handled by outside contractors. And then we would want to do some more meetings and site visits with LA Metro, Muni, and BART, just to try to get more at the people that do the day-to-day implementation, so that we can issue spot and problem solve, in advance of like what the situation will be at our agency. We then do the competitive procurements for those various vendors that are identified. We would do public outreach and internal training before ultimately implementing. Now, I have, just for informational purposes, I'm giving you some estimated costs, but this is really our ballpark based on looking at other contracts we've seen or estimates. And until we have a scope and kind of go out to the market or do some requests for information, these could be completely wrong. But we wanted to kind of give you this sense of, we have identified potentially up to $450,000 in estimated annual costs. The big proportion of that would be the new handheld devices with capacity to look up citation history and other features. So that's half of it. And then the vendor to prepare and manage the mail notices, we think that would be around $60,000 to $120,000 a year, depending on the volume. A collections vendor to collect fine payments. We don't really know what and how they charge, like, is it a % of collections or those sorts of things? So if that's an area you wanted us to investigate, that we would, once we knew what the fine amounts are, I think what we would do is we would go out and do a request for information to kind of the collections industry of, is there a bottom line amount before a collections vendor will even come in and attempt to collect that debt for you? Because I don't know if we set it at a certain amount, like what that means. And then the hearing officers to adjudicate the administrative hearings. Based on what LA Metro, the volume that we heard from other agencies, we think it would be $14,000 to $20,000 a year. And then office space unknown, we just have to understand like where and how much. That's kind of also those hearing locations of is there a cost to that, or is there an existing location that could be used? And then again, our ballpark estimate of one full-time employee for program management was around $100,000 a year. And then we anticipated another $200,000 to $250,000 in estimated one-time startup costs. But ultimately, what we would hope we would do is, after we get the direction today, and between now and March, we'll be able to go out and get a much better estimate and validate these costs. So that leads me back to the staff recommendation, is that we would like some kind of committee direction on what you think that the fine amount should be, including late fees, community service options, what the eligible violation should be, what the disqualifying factor should be. This is the one area where we kind of have a specific staff recommendation, which is, that similar to what we do currently in diversion, that a fare violation that's coupled with a non-section 99580 violation would be ineligible, and then instead follow the existing criminal court process. And then what should the consequence be for unresolved or multiple violations? So with that, I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you so much. Just want to check and make sure before we go to committee members, if there are any public members of the public.
No public comment, Chair.
Okay, so no comment. Let me start off first. You see who's on the lights. Nobody yet. Okay. Thank you so much, Karen. We've been kind of going back and forth on this for some years now, so appreciate getting to this point based on the meeting, the direction from the last meeting. I have a few ideas around the direction for what's on this slide that is currently up. And so, and doing this with, keeping the statute in mind of the limitations that we have around violations and what we would be charging. So I think the current fine that we have is $75.
I'll go back to
Yeah. Okay. You will probably have to write this down, or we can provide this to you, but these are just my thoughts about a scale. So I think we should keep that the same, the $75 for the first offense. I would like to have an offense for a lower amount for minors. And I think that would be up to 18 for $55. I want to keep the community service option the same, which is the 3 hours that we currently have. $100 for missing the first deadline, and then $125 for missing the second. So it's sort of a hybrid between some of the models that you have here. But that's what I have in mind. So for feedback on the second point about disqualifying factors, I agree with what you have listed out with the
so eligible violations, or do you want me to skip forward to disqualifying factors?
Eligible violations.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
That's what I agree with what you have here. For the spitting, I would like it to be specific to spitting on a person, on an operator, on, an officer, or on another person. That's not super clear here, but either way, I agree with what you have here.
My slide could have been better because I just put spitting, but the actual statute says expectorating in a facility or on a vehicle.
Okay.
So we could potentially then, in our public information about it, say this specifically excludes spitting on a person, so that nobody thinks that should be.
I think the only time I've seen this used by our officers was when somebody was doing a bunch of other stuff, but then they spit at passengers, but didn't hit them.
Where intent is.
It's not really used all that often.
Yeah, but I mean, I overall, I agree with it being on the list for being outside of the program parameters, right?
Okay.
It's what we're outside of the administrative program parameters, which is what we're okay. Does everyone get that? Like, understand those? Okay.
So would you want this on the list if it says just on a facility or vehicle, or because of kind of the vagueness of the context of when the violation could be, we remove it?
I think when you discussed this being covered as assault,
right,
it should kind of mirror that, I think.
Okay.
I mean, but again, when we receive the ordinance, maybe folks will feel differently. I want it to be more broad, have different feedback. But that's so far, that's what, for it to be taken off this list, certainly I would just want some intent there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. There's someone, I hate spitting. I think it's horrible and gross and nasty, but just someone spitting on the corner somewhere out on a platform is like different than someone spitting at an operator or at, that's.
I can work on some language to make that distinction,
okay,
so that you don't have somebody spitting at someone, but it doesn't actually hit them, not like being administrative. But if somebody's got a lot of phlegm and spits and it's gross, but it's not intended, no, sorry.
That's exactly what I wanted to talk about this morning. But I think I saw that And I was like, I just, I'll leave that to my colleagues to discuss if they want to add more stuff, okay? Uh, and so I had a couple questions about, I'm going to, where am I going next? I want to talk about the collection process. And
So we're ready to move on from this slide.
I am. I'm sure we'll
Yeah.
go back.
Okay.
Depending on what my colleagues say, but I am. And I want to talk about the collection process because I want to get clarity on, and again, I know you haven't had time to really do a deep dive with the other transit agencies that are listed here, but if we went the route of referring to the state franchise tax board, how does that impact our bottom line with regard to collections and how much infrastructure we would have to provide as an agency?
It's unclear to me. That is certainly something that I can do more research on. I tried to research what it is, and you referred to it. We would be the last in line, and it was unclear to me how SF Muni and BART actually send stuff to FTB, because when I saw it, it looked like if you're going to send a debt to FTB, then you need to have somebody's social security number and other things. And so we don't get that. And I don't want to start collecting that for our fare violations. So maybe this is an area that we need to do more research. I don't know that I'll have answers by December, but by March we would have because I honestly don't know if these threats, it's just a threat of collection to make people want to not potentially have collections, and so they pay.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we've talked to, again, like LA Metro and other people, it's really hard to collect. And if you went, and that's where a collection vendor, like what's the minimum information that they need to collect a debt? I don't know that what we have on our citation is necessarily enough for them to match, because they have all sorts of like Fair Debt Collection Act like rules that they have to follow and make sure that they're not trying to collect a debt against the wrong person, which is why they normally tie everything to a social security number. So I don't know how truly any of these agencies actually engage in collections activities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the court does, when they do as well. So it's the franchise tax board, the debt has to be at least $10, and it goes on a list, and there's all these other priorities that go with it. But when I looked at just their website explaining the information that you need, it included, social security number. And so I don't know where and how.
What do we have like an MOU with the court right now, or any kind of relationship? It's just a referral.
It's a black box.
Okay.
We send the citations and we get very little feedback about what happens to them. And then I can't recall if it's monthly or quarterly, we will get a check from them, but it's not even generally itemized, so sometimes it's like lumped in of where we'll get restitution for somebody in a vandalism case, and we'll also get fines that they've collected. And so we don't get, you got $20 on this fare evasion violation. Like we don't get any of that information. So it's really hard to know. I will, I guess, emphasize once again, the whole point of any of these programs is just to set up a structure where people feel either honor bound or compelled by rules to buy the fare in the first place.
Yeah.
Like we are not anticipating making money off of any of these fines. Right. We just want there to be, I guess, a consequence at the end of the line that somebody doesn't want to face. And so instead they buy their fare or they pay their fine right away and are done with it. And so
we're looking for fair compliance, and that's really what we're trying to set up.
And so so part of the consequence here for the majority of these lines is also the exclusionary process and order. So you said that's a little bit hard to enforce, but that's a part of the consequence model.
They are allowed to, and that's one of the things that they have as a toolbox. And it's a threat of, if you do this, we have the right to exclude you. How many they actually issue is unclear, because those are really labor intensive. Normally MTS, we do do exclusions, but we only do this for public safety right now. And so we have maybe 10 that are out there, and they're for people that have caused repeated public safety issues and violations where they're either a threat to specific employees or operators or the general public or to safe operations, so to do it for fair, there's a lot of people that violate their fare. So you can't imagine that you would have 1,000 exclusion orders out there at one time.
Well, yeah,
But-
there's
but-
a lot of people that violate, but to be clear, it would be an amount of citations that have not been paid. So there are
Correct.
people that violate, people that pay. Then there are people that continually violate that don't pay,
Yes.
which is a completely different number.
Right.
I was just going to say that as much as it hasn't been the practice in the industry, exclusionary, that's where people are going. And they are finding ways to make it work much more effectively for those who are repeat violators of whatever, whether it's fair compliance or some other harassing activities.
Yeah.
So that's definitely where our colleagues in the industry are going, is towards stricter exclusionary focus.
And we do have the ability, we try to use it with discretion. We do not use it for minors, but to eject people. So if you're caught without a fare, you get a ticket and you need to get off the train unless you want to buy one. But we don't want to strand people. So that's why we definitely don't do that with minors. It's more of a warning,
Right.
especially with the youth opportunity pass. So you just really need to have your pass. And but that is another tool that all agencies use. And in hoping that then if you disrupt their trip, then maybe they've got to get to work and they need to go somewhere. So next time they'll buy their fare so they don't run the risk that they're told to deboard, go pay, they'll miss the next, and then they have to wait for the next train.
Okay. So I know I've given very clear feedback on at least 2 of the items. I'll see if my colleagues have anything, because the CATA resolve, and I think we have also discussed before in different meetings about exclusionary, and I don't know exactly what that looks like. But I think the board has somewhat of an appetite to see what that would look like. But I will see if anyone else have feedback. Vice Mayor.
I don't know if this is a good suggestion or not, but for the ones that are falling into the category where that's going all the way and they're not, they keep offending. Is there a way that once we get to this level, that we could make them pay for like a monthly, if they wanted to be able to ride at all, that they have to have a monthly pass? It's just a suggestion.
I think we could certainly craft that. I can't kind of off the top of my head, come up with proposed language, but that would be, for later, we can look into that of, different ways that could also be a first violation, or, the same way that there's the traffic school under, LA Metro, you could have on a first violation instead of, paying the fine, you buy a monthly pass.
Yeah, and I was thinking of that too, Chair. If you have someone, because the traffic school, is that something that we pay for, traffic school, or they go to it like the same as DMV traffic school? Where is that traffic school?
I don't know if LA Metro manages this internally or if they have their vendor do it, but they basically created an online course or training, and so you would log in. I don't think that the cost of that program would be that significant, but you log in and do the time, go through the slides, and then complete it. They get some sort of notice that the person completed that program, and then that makes them eligible for the lower fine.
Because maybe that could be an alternative for them instead of taking the traffic school or doing, volunteer work, that they just choose to get a monthly pass. Just an idea.
Yeah, let's put it down as direction and a part of the discussion. I think that's fair. And I think that as we see our numbers trending up, we want to keep them trending up. Maybe that's the way to
And
do
those
so.
types of issues kind of fall under that kind of community service like option alternative.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's something that's flexible. I don't necessarily need to know what it's good for us to know those ideas so we can put them in future presentations,
Sure.
but those don't depend on my ability to do the next steps of our research.
Got it. Okay.
Like,
And also keeping in mind too, I mean, some people, some people just can't afford, but but the option should be, I think it's fair to have the option on the table.
And I'm not suggesting anyone under 18 either.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Vice Chair Goebel.
Thank you, Chair. A very complicated topic. Thank you for diving into a lot of this information. Changing from a criminal model to an administrative model, if I could just call them that for the time being, is expensive and things. So we have to look at the broader picture and the impact. I think one of the intent is to not have somebody be labeled with a criminal offense that follows them for each citation, a misdemeanor and misdemeanor and misdemeanor. I get that's the intent. On the administrative side, if it becomes a collection issue and not a criminal issue, is there an amount, and you've asked the question, and it's a fair question, is there an amount that a collection agency will say, that's not worth our time? And more importantly, does it get reported to a credit bureau? Because something reported to a credit bureau is going to follow you much harder and longer than a criminal citation. You aren't going to be able to apply for any credit. You may get other problems down the line if you want to get a car to get to work. You can't get a loan. So we want to be careful we're not doing unintended consequences with this. So the credit bureau is an important thing we need to find out. Now, if it's not reported to a credit bureau and it goes to a collection agency, but nothing's done about it, there's really no penalty. You don't have a crime. You don't have a credit bureau notification. It just goes into a black hole. And we certainly don't want that, because then it becomes a de facto honor system of payment. There is no penalty for ignoring not paying a fare. So we want to be careful to look at it from that point of view. So the credit bureau is an important thing. Also, it's important for the morale of our CCIs to know, hey, if I do this work, what difference is it going to make in the outcome? The next presentation that we have is a tremendous amount of great data on the impact of increased safety presence and compliance presence in our system since February. Interestingly, nobody has signed up for community service in the first 3 months that we did it. And that was 5,200 citations eligible for diversion. Nobody signed up for community service. And it's good to have it as an option. Doesn't hurt. Only 2 to 4% of eligible diversion paid $25. 2 to 4%. So the reality is, even then, and we have the most lenient fee structure for violations, $25. By statute, $75, but we only do $25. And even $25, only 2 to 4% will pay that. The rest just today becomes after 120 days goes to court for criminal processing. But if we're going to send those to the administrative side, are we going to charge? It doesn't make sense to charge more than $25 to go to collections, because they'd rather just pay the $25. Collections that won't make any money off of $25. Even if we increase it to $100 to include administrative fee, that's worse than paying a $25 fine. So this whole sense of criminal versus administrative, it's very sticky. And the key to me is, I got to tell you, there are other parts of community that we disrupt to make it uncomfortable to continue violating. I don't think we have the equipment to know who's a repeat violator. I think we just know you have a fare or you don't have a fare. We don't have the equipment to know this is your second time, your third time, your fourth time. And the best we can do, I think, is just to say, get off the train. I want to disrupt your day. I think that's the best we can do. Because the fines and community service aren't resulting in compliance. This is a broader discussion really about what's the impact to somebody if they don't pay our fare. And we should enforce this. We enforce parking violations. We enforce other low-level violations. We should enforce this as well. If people have a need that they can't pay a fare, perhaps the county who helps people in need can allocate some money to this kind of thing. But I'm really concerned about the unintended consequences of credit bureau. I think we need that question answered as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Foster.
Yes, thank you. And I guess just as I listen to the conversation, and we talk about what's working and what's not, and maybe I'm ignorant to this, but if we are implementing this program and we have data on the first few months of implementation, I would ask, and I would need some clarification, and hopefully we'll get it in the next presentation, just what has our communication been and outreach, and how do people understand and know what options are available to them? To this day, some things I don't know what options are available to me as I'm taking care of certain agencies, penalties, structure, so on and so forth, right? And so I think the other thing that we also need to make sure we understand is what the majority of our ridership is. And I think we've kind of litigated this over and over, which has led us to why we're discussing a criminal versus an administrative process. And so I think we need to make sure that we keep that in mind as we have this discussion. Because I am supportive of the administrative process and understand the spirit and intent of what we are trying to accomplish, right? The other thing that I'd like to say, just in regards to providing some feedback, the feedback that the chair gave on the what I'll call the fee or violation structure, the penalty, the fees, 75, a lower amount for students, and also with the 100 and 125 for missed first deadline, second deadline. I think that's reasonable, in line with what we understanding ridership and what we're trying to accomplish. When we talk about the very specific violations, and if I understand PUC 99580, there's a list, and it looks like it's the 13, if I understand correctly.
Yes.
But we do have the option to pick and choose what we want to make part of this per se administrative process and
Correct.
not. So my question would be, as you look at just the items that are you highlighted in red on the slide here, if I were to ask, carrying explosives or acid, flammable liquid, or toxic or hazardous material, if it's not part of the administrative process, what is the criminal violation, or what individuals would be held to if they are found to be in violation of that statute?
You know what? I didn't research that before today, so I don't know. I'm sure most of these are probably infractions, not misdemeanors. But I can confirm, but similar to that, a fare evasion is an infraction, not a misdemeanor, unless you get to, I think it might go to a misdemeanor once you're at 3 or more. But I think most of these are infractions. I can look up and confirm if any of them are actually misdemeanors.
I think that I would appreciate having that information as I look at this, because my next question is just from a practical perspective. I understand spitting on an individual is assault. I totally understand that, but spitting on a facility or on the trolley or on who deals with that? Are you telling me our drivers have to go and deal with cleaning up the spit? Who deals with that? How
We
how
have
does that work from a
janitorial
practical
staff.
stance?
We have janitorial staff.
And what happens if someone is urinating or defecating? Who deals with that? Does somebody pull over? What happens if you got a bus of 20 people and someone's defecating or urinating? What's the practical side of that? What happens?
Well, we would pull over a bus in that circumstance and deboard
Yeah, and same thing
and
with
bring another
trolley.
bus.
We normally have to take it out of service. So if somebody urinates or defecates on a vehicle, then normally at the next available location, they cut that car off the train and take it out of service if they can't like immediately. You know, it depends on the level.
And so
can
if
be
you take
cleaned
it out
up?
of service, then you have to have another vehicle or another vehicle that comes, folks get off said damaged vehicle to get on the new one and go, right? So we've just disrupted a whole ridership that have things to do if they're going to work, whatever
Yes.
the case may
Yes,
be.
and depending on the level of it, we might need to bring in hazmat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, I suppose maybe I should have highlighted that one as well, you know.
Okay, I think for me, just as we talk about eligible violations, I agree spitting is, I don't know why we would kind of tolerate that, right? We have COVID, we got the flu, we have all these things going on. Carrying explosives or at whatever item 7 is seems a true public safety issue and something that we should have a higher standard for. Defecating, urinating, I think just if you look at the degree of what we would, as an organization, what we would have to go through to resolve said issues, I think that's something that I think we really need to look at in regards to having a conversation about eligibility.
Okay.
And so I think if we can understand the other side to this, what is the standard violation if these things take place? I think that would be good as we are trying to make our final decision on what to include and what not to include.
Okay.
I do think the conversation on how we deal with credit is a much needed conversation, because I think, as I may not agree that the criminal side follows you less than the credit side, I don't know if I can agree with that, because I think they are both very detrimental and serve different, create different obstacles and different issues as we're having this discussion. So I think we do need to really look at that and have more discussion, and would like to hear from the public on their thoughts as well. So I think, having more of a robust conversation would be helpful in regards to that. In regards to multiple violations, kind of reminds me, my father used to always say, a hard head makes us all, at some point in time, you have to draw the line and have some accountability. I do think at some point, for certain violations, as you look at the list, there are other things that are coming into play that would play into individuals that are doing certain things, right? Fare evasion, I think, is kind of one that is more isolated, but it seems like with other things, there's other things involved. And I think that comes back to our systems and how we deal with folks in communities of concern in regards to resources, right? And being able to get the services and help that they need on that side of certain things. So I agree, it's a complex conversation. But I think for now, that's my feedback. I do think at some point we do have to draw a line. If you're not going to, as we are trying to work with you on the administrative side, if you're a constant violator, that we do have to at some point draw the line and deal with that accordingly. Yeah. So I'll leave that there for now. In regards to my feedback, I do would like to see what comes back with the monthly pass option too. If we're talking simple fare evasion and things like that. So I think good comments, and I think we just have more work to do to flesh it out. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I go back to Vice Mayor Dillard, I want to just have a couple quick responses, and then we'll give everybody else one more round and move to our next and last item. very quickly. Definitely agree there needs to be a conversation around credit. That's why I'm kind of teetering with this, not collecting at all, going to the FTB, but here's the way that I'm looking at it. I think the exclusionary process keeps the crime, so to speak, consistent with the punishment. Once we go outside of our transit line and saying that if you don't want to pay, you cannot ride, then we start to impact people in a lot of different other areas, right? But I believe that some sort of exclusionary process would keep that sort of accountability within the system. And that's really the difference that I'm seeing, that it is for now until we get a bunch of federal money, this is not a free system, right? So when you get on, you do have to pay. However, you not willing to pay, in my opinion, philosophically, should not impact you 2, 3, 4, 10 years down the line because you didn't want to pay a $250 fare. But it should impact your ability to engage in writing, right? So that's kind of where I think there is some accountability there. And I think based on if we go forward, the type of equipment that we will have to get, the fact that the Transit Transformation Task Force that Sharon and I have talked about a lot, it's going towards, having more of these types of policies on our transit lines across the state, and the equipment that we're looking at buying that will be able to allow us to log these types of things. There's a possibility we can have somewhat of a stronger exclusionary process. And I think because it in my mind, the accountability, as much as possible, unless it's an actual violent crime or some other kind of crime, should stay on the line. Like if you don't want to pay, then ultimately maybe you should not ride. This is not the best place for you, So that's what I would say to that. And we can continue to have these discussions because I think it makes our approach better. If we look at where we are now, right? Our public safety system is a lot of different ideas that staff has had to take in and try to implement. And we're seeing some of the improvements in our line based on that. So I do appreciate these conversations. And so that's really just all I wanted to say in response. And I will go to Member Dillard and Member Rodriguez after that.
And Chair, can I just so that then if you want to comment on it, based on the conversation regarding collections, and again, we've really been trying to figure out what do we study? And if the direction from the board or the committee today is let's look at what it would look like if we had a fine schedule that's the 75, and then 100, 125. I think that we can look at, can we get the collection industries to just respond to a request for information of if we have a fine schedule that looks like this, is this something that collections vendors would, do a contract to? If so, what's the cost of that, and what's the credit bureau consequences? What's the information that you would need for us to be able to collect it? And then that will help. Hopefully we can get the industry to kind of respond and give us those numbers, which then knowing that can help us, then ultimately frame the program that you all want. Because I haven't known, am I asking them for a $25 fine? Am I asking them for a $75 fine? And I think depending on those numbers, we'll get different answers. So that at least allows us to then, what is the credit bureau consequence? Are we allowed to say, we want you to collect this, but you are not allowed to report it? Is the creditor allowed to say it can't be reported to credit bureaus, and if you do, then what is the impact of that? I don't know. So maybe that's where we would, and then when we come back to you in March, we have more of that information and you can have that secondary discussion of with that data, what do you want to do?
In my mind, procedurally, that would be I think it would be a topic for discussion possibly in December. I think we have one last meeting scheduled in December, and then then we can determine what we want to see in the ordinance, just from that kind of that credit versus criminal record
I
will
don't
try.
think
I
we'll
just am-
have enough time to
I'm
get
worried
that
that I don't know
info.
that I can get those
Okay.
answers from the
Okay.
credit bureau in 2 months. Like normally it will take us a while to put together what those questions are, put it out on the street, get answers, and then with the holidays. So that's my only
Okay.
concern there. Like, but we can keep you updated.
Yeah, if not, we may not need to meet in December is my point, but I will go, let's go to Councilmember Dillon.
Yeah, I just had a quick question for Karen. Since you talked about the credit bureau, do we know, like you were talking about $25 or the $75, do they instantly report, or could we, or does it's just automatic that they do it once they receive the notification that we're collecting? Does it automatically go on someone's credit, or is there any limitation as to when they actually report?
I know that there are rules, but I don't know enough off the top of my head what those rules are. And so that's the thing that I think that we would flesh out of, like, if our program was like this, would this be collectible? We need to come up with all those questions are. If we drop the fine lower than that, is there an amount if we dropped it lower where you couldn't? Are you able to, like, when would you first have to report this? Are we allowed to instruct you not to report it? I think we would go through like that whole list of questions that to the industry and hope that the industry actually responds. So that's where we have to research, like, who do we send this out to? Who might actually answer our questions? Those
And I think we can find out what their experience has been with programs like parking citations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All the cities have parking citations. so
And the only
programs,
distinction
so.
with, I think, absolutely, like how they report it with parking violations, that the kind of catch with parking is it's connected to the car. And so ultimately, if you don't pay your parking violation, even with its collections, then they can send something for a hold on your registration at the DMV. And so that's why it's really easy to connect the violation to the vehicle. There's no question of, is this the car that got the parking ticket, like normally, and then there's ultimately they need to have a registration. So there's a certain point where it comes around and they can't ignore the problem anymore. Whereas for our types of violation, there's not that same thing. So it's just, how do we problem solve that?
And do we have any notification to the violator that this could possibly go on their credit? Is there any warning for them?
Well, the current program that we have, no, because it just goes to court. I mean, that would be one of the types of notices that we would send out to people if we did in a program like this and we had collections of warning, if you don't pay this, then it might get sent to collection. So if somebody is actually going to come trying to get this money from you, so you should pay it now before it gets added on later.
Yeah, because I would like to see that where we have at least that communication to the violator, that they have a chance to stop that. And maybe another interjection, that another option would be to just pay for a monthly fare. We can maybe use opportunities like that to opt out of continuing to go on through the courts and get reported on their through the credit reporting agencies. It's another opportunity. And I think there's like a couple of opportunities where we can use an option to just get out and handle it that way, pay for a monthly fare and, end the process there so that there's no more red tape for them. So just options that I think that we could use with some of these processes. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for staff for preparing this. Very much appreciated. I guess I'll start off with saying, kind of ideologically, I think we all want MTS to be successful, and we want it to be successful financially. We want it to be safe. But I don't want us to add stricter penalties as an excuse to penalize individuals, because it's something that historically has followed our communities. And by our communities, I mean, I can speak south of the 8, National City in particular. So I would like this to be equitable. So I do have kind of a series of questions. Do we know how many citations are given per year, give or take?
You know, we know that, but to like, and it's changed since February. I think the next presentation has some stats on it. I did not bring those stats up with me.
That's okay.
I think we're doing about 2,000 a month right now.
Or a little bit higher.
Okay,
13,000, I think, today.
since February. Okay, so around 13,000 so far to date for calendar year 2025, I think.
Okay.
But so a little more than 2,000 a month right now.
And do we know where those citations are given?
We do not.
It'd be nice to know. For the reasons mentioned before. I don't want this to be used as an excuse to over-police a group of people that overwhelmingly use the public transit system. So having the data, I think, is important, where the citations are given. I also am interested to see if those citations are in different languages. Do we know?
Is it in Spanish also? The citations in different languages? I think it's only in English.
Considering the fact that I think a substantial amount of people come from Tijuana, they should probably be in Spanish. Just a suggestion. Another question I have is, do we know how many officers there are around the entire trolley system? Are they distributed evenly throughout the system?
Yeah, that'll be discussed in the next presentation, and I'm not the person with that. Tim, do you want to?
Board Member Rodriguez, could we please wait for the next presentation to answer your questions?
Sure. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah. But just so you all, have an idea of the perspective that I have and want some answers to the specific questions, again, to try to make our public transit as equitable as possible. So I'd like to know how many officers are there? Are they distributed evenly throughout the entire system? Certainly would not be in support of over-policing some areas. And another question I have, seeing as we know, a lot of folks are monolingual Spanish speakers. Are the individuals that are providing citations, do they speak Spanish? Just a question. And if not, why not? And if not, maybe they should. And so maybe providing we do this in our city, providing an additional stipend for individuals that speak other languages. Doesn't have to be Spanish, but another language, because we realize that we are in a very diverse part of the country and people speak multiple languages. So that's a suggestion as well. And in doing so, when the individual officer provides a citation, do they have a conversation with the individual?
Yes.
Do they give them an option of purchasing a ticket or maybe a monthly pass at that moment?
That's not part of our current program. The board made a change to our program effective February 1st, where you no longer have the option to purchase fares on the spot. But you do, when you get a citation, you get the diversion program option explained to you and get information about it.
Okay. I definitely look forward to revisit that maybe at some point. And I do agree with my colleague Dillard on providing an option for folks, even if it isn't to pay the daily fare, but to pay a monthly fare on the spot. And I also support the administrative citation process, although I understand that our finances follow us significantly. Again, our history and our communities prove that our record follows us everywhere, wherever we apply for jobs, anything we do. So just some comments, and look forward to some of the data coming back next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Vice Chair Gogo.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple more follow-up questions. I agree with you. The request for information is key for the collection agencies. If we have to gather a social security number, a Cal ID number, what happens if we don't get it? Then it's moot about going to collection. So that would be key to know what they need. I think it would be interesting for us to know what the FTB process is and what is the impact. I'd like to know the cost for investing in equipment so that we know if somebody has had prior violations. I'd also like to know In the current process, if it goes to courts, can you cancel, erase, expunge that information if they decide to make good somehow? Okay, I'll pay. And what is that cost? Is it the cost of the citation plus court costs? Is it the citation? In the same way that you can clear your credit problems by paying up, is there a same way to make whole on the court side as well? Would be a question I would like to know.
Yes, in the sense that we have a very good relationship with the homeless court, team. And so even if you're not part of the homeless community or needing services or part of that, we have a conduit to him. So if there are people that, again, are late or already have post-conviction. So like what homeless court does is cases have already gone through court and you have violations and you have things that are sent to collections by the court system. And if you go through the homeless court process, they will have these pop-up events and they will go in and they will claw back the collections case and they will basically dismiss or expunge, I don't know what the legal status is, but they will kind of undo those court violations. And so we have been able to work with them for our cases, of if we have someone who comes to us and is trying to clean something up. It's been rare, but we on an ad hoc basis will say, we'll see what we can do. And normally they're able to help us. So as they then might have to go through the steps of connecting up with the people we contact them to, but then they can get it through that process that kind of San Diego Superior Court and the local prosecutor's office and public defender already have that infrastructure in place, and they let us participate.
It sounds a little complex, but I think what you're describing and what I hope we could have is a transit court. In the same way that homeless people are able to get rid of 6, 7 camping violations with an appearance at and when I say court, they go into a park. You don't have to go to Kearny Mesa.
That's exactly
they go
the
to a
same
park and they
events.
set up a tent.
Yes.
In the area where it is. Perhaps there's an opportunity for us to have a transit court at a transit station in an area where we could do the same thing. Hey, come on in. This is how we would like to clear out these violations. And in return, it gets dismissed out of the court system.
Yeah, we could certainly see. I mean, those are the events that we participate at. We just kind of do it through them. We don't send our own representatives to have a table, but we could look at that.
I wonder if our fare violators are aware of that, since it's kind of branded as homeless court rather than other things too.
Yeah. Well, right now, if I guess if they come to us in advance, then they don't need, they just talking to our staff, we can help them resolve it. But if it's already gone through court, yeah, I mean, we certainly, I don't recall what we have on our information on our website about post-conviction relief. I think we might have something, but if not, I could beef that up if somebody's kind of Googling and trying to find out, what their options are of like who they could call for assistance.
I see, and this is getting a little bit ahead, but it's about this discussion. Slide 20 on the next thing has a little, have you received a fare evasion citation? It seems to be some kind of postcard or printed material. When is that given to somebody, or how is it given to somebody?
Hi. So yeah, I was going to talk about that further at the next agenda, but that is a pilot flyer that we created for the Office of Homeless Solutions to issue through like these hygiene kits they give out to individuals experiencing homelessness. They have a pilot program of sticking those flyers into the hygiene kits with along with other resource information. And we're going to learn to see, was that effective? Did it help people learn about diversion? Because we're trying to figure out ways of increasing notice of the program outside of our usual methods. And so that was one example, a very clear to the point flyer that we created for the Office of Homeless Solutions.
Sounds good. We'll talk about it more in a little bit. Thank you.
Yes, perfect segue. I think you got the direction that you needed for this item.
Yes, I do.
Okay, all right, great. So let us now go to item number 5, which had a little bit of crossover from this item. This is our transit security and passenger safety department report. So I think Dan is doing presentation. So yes, let's please proceed and kind of make it through this. And, I'm shooting for 11 o'clock, okay? Adjournment. Thank you.
I'll do my very best to get to 11 o'clock. Good morning, Chair and Public Safety Committee. I am Tim Kern, and I'm the Director of the Transit Security and Passenger Safety Department. In just a moment, I'm going to turn this over to Deputy Director Dan Brislin to present the fiscal year 24-25 report. Before doing that, I'd like to real quickly introduce our leadership, starting with our Field Operations Manager, Sean Donaldson, behind me. Assistant Field Operations Manager, Isaiah Alexander. Records Manager, Rochelle Dubzinski. Our Professional Standards Manager, Herb Taft. Our Contract Security Manager from Intercon Security Services, that's Calistro Salcido. Training Coordinator, Mike Reaney. And finally, our Operational and Data Analyst, Josh Ortiz. The entire team here plays a role in collecting and analyzing all the information we're about to present. So this time I'll turn it over to Dan.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning. And we really appreciate the opportunity to talk about some of the great things that our folks are doing. We're constantly developing, and right now we're in a major recruiting process to really develop employees who embrace the community, really embrace our core values. And this management team behind me are the really ones who put that all together. First off, I want to thank the board for investing in staffing increase. It really has allowed us to be more strategic in the placement of our staff, as well as create new disciplines and have a better presence on the system. Our personnel here in yellow, you can see there are code compliance inspectors. We refer to them as CCIs. They're the ones in yellow. They have a limited powers of arrest under 836.5 of the penal code. They are unarmed and can make arrests and issue citations for defined violations authorized by the board. They're not peace officers and do not have the same authority as a deputy sheriff or a police officer. As of today.
Dan, if I could, so Board Member Rodriguez, this gets to your question about the number of personnel.
Yes, as of right now, we have 81 inspectors out in the system. They are evenly distributed throughout the system for each shift. And I'll talk a little bit more how we will distribute staff throughout the system depending on crime rates. But as far as daily operations, yes, they are distributing them throughout different lines. As I said before, these are our code compliance inspectors. We have 21 supervisors. We have another academy starting October 27th, which will bring us that much closer to achieving full staffing, which is really what we're trying to do. And it's going to be exciting once we have that. Our personnel in blue, those are our contract intercon security officers. They are private can make private persons arrests, 837 of the penal code, which is like what any of us are, private persons out in the public. They're a highly visible uniform presence. There are 215 personnel, 88 armed and 127 armed. Now, again, we talked about our recruiting efforts and we've really grown exponentially. And with that comes a responsibility for training. And we really invested in our training because it's very important. We talked a little bit last time about de-escalation training. I want to talk to you about what we've done even more after that. De-escalation is a critical part of what we do. As we discussed last month, we currently have 2 in-house certified de-escalation instructors. Our CCIs encounter conflicts and challenging situations every day. We want to ensure they have the direction, tools, and policies to make sure they make good decisions out in the field. To build upon our current process right now, we're taking advantage of a training opportunity that was offered to us by the DA's office, and they'll be training our CCIs on crisis management and de-escalation. So we really appreciate their gracious offer to train our personnel as well on top of what we're already doing. Next is defensive tactics. Currently, we have 2 certified defensive tactics instructors and also contract defensive tactics instructors from the San Diego Regional Public Safety Training Institute. Defensive tactics is a perishable skill and something we want to avoid using. But when it is, it's crucial that its application is done properly, standardized, and for lawful reasons. We are currently conducting update training through Southwest College. And that is an evolution that we're going through right now. Next is implicit bias and discrimination. look, we have invested a lot into this. We continue to increase our training on implicit bias. It is a critical topic. Our organization embraces diversity and condemns any form of racism or discrimination. Supervisor, thank you for attending our one training. We appreciated that. Along with our ongoing series of delivering formal curriculum and implicit bias and discrimination, we sent our assistant operations manager to instructor school for racial and identity profiling. This course was delivered by the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles and will continue to reinforce the commitment of treating everyone without bias and with dignity and respect. ICS training, which is critical incident management. We really want our supervisors to know what to do and how the system works when things go bad. And we put them all through incident command system and make sure they know that they understand how to be a liaison when critical incidents happen, to make sure they understand what police are going to do and what fire can do and how we can assist them when this occurs. We have a new training coordinator, and by building on our training program, again, what it does, it really professionalizes our organization by providing our staff ongoing training, as I discussed before. First aid and CPR, we have now certified 2 first aid and CPR instructors, which again assures ongoing training and is a significant cost saving from when contracting these services in the past. Narcan training. Well, fentanyl, as we know, continues to be a crisis in our community. Our CCIs have been using it for quite some time, but also we felt the need, and everyone I think felt the need, that our TSOs, our intercon security, should be certified and deliver that as well. And that is essentially what we've done. All of our CCIs, all of our TSOs have been trained on the proper use of Narcan and are now carrying it in the field and actually have used it. And lastly, Fourth Amendment training and laws of arrest. We are ensuring through training that our CCIs understand the significance of the Fourth Amendment and the application of laws behind what they do. De-escalation is heavily emphasized in this course, as well as the duty to intervene. Public service, public safety, and the preservation of constitutional rights are paramount in every action that our folks take. And we really stress that through training. Now let's talk about some of the exciting things we have as far as our specialized units. Our homeless outreach team, I'd love to showcase them. They have done amazing things over the last year. Our homeless outreach team is becoming increasingly more proactive in engaging individuals experiencing homelessness. We embrace the need to rely on different resources to assist our unsheltered population. You see our folks up there, they're dressed in uniform that says MTS outreach, clearly displayed on to make them know that they're there to help. Our team members have a passion for the job, and it is showing. The HOT team is out there daily distributing clothing and snacks, providing DMV vouchers, referring individuals to vital health human services programs like CalWorks, Medi-Cal, and CalFresh, teaming up with organizational programs like Downtown Partnership. Matter of fact, we had a meeting with them yesterday. They just sung the praises of our folks. Chula Vista, HOT team, San Diego Rescue Mission, Veterans Affairs. These wonderful outside organizations have helped MTS outreach efforts grow exponentially. And through having partnerships with them, it makes partners with other agencies as well. So we have a lot of resources to draw upon. Also, our teams assist individuals in acute and chronic mental health crisis by referrals to PERT or the Mobile Crisis Response Team to really help folks out there who are really in need and may need someone to come out there and talk to them. Talk a little about what they did. And you can kind of see the statistics. From July 24 to June 25, MTS HOT team conducted 429 joint organizational outreach events. Out of 16,708 individuals contacted, 5,008 accepted resources or some form of assistance. 209 individuals were placed in shelter and 15 secured permanent housing, which is outstanding. As you can see, this is a considerable increase from the years prior. We continue to grow. Before that, we really were just scratching the surface, and we want to continue to grow thereafter. Last summer, MTS, and I attended that as well, we attended the SD Heart Summer Workshop at San Diego State University in an effort to collaborate in homelessness research. The purpose was to develop a comprehensive framework and understand the complex causes and contributory factors to homelessness. So we really want to be part of this solution. We want to be engaged. Naloxone, this is just a report. Every time we have this, we kind of see where we are because naloxone is being delivered on a regular basis. Fentanyl crisis is real. You can see from last year to this year, it's remained relatively static, 136 to 131, but it continues to be a problem and is a big reason why now our TSOs are carrying it as well. I want to thank SAVE San Diego for providing our CCIs an in-depth training on fentanyl, the effects of this, the symptoms, of how it's made, the dangers. They really did a great job, and further for our folks really further to understand what fentanyl is all about, because this is an absolute crisis. Our encampment details. Our camps team has conducted multiple cleanups and joint agency efforts to address encampments and environmentally impacted waste areas. Camps team works with Urban Corps San Diego River Park Foundation, San Diego Police Department, Environmental Services, San Diego Park Rangers. Quarterly, MTS hosts a multi-agency homeless encampment meeting to discuss encampment issues and strategies with Caltrans, San Diego Neighborhood Policing, and Environmental Services. You can see from the data that the trash cleanup up there is significantly decreased. And what that is, that's really good news, because what it means is our collaboration with outside partners is working, and our more consistent presence in the vulnerable areas is making an impact. Our bus enforcement team. Take a look at some of those stats. Our bus team consists of 6 teams that provide 24/7 bus coverage we never had before. On a daily basis, bus teams conduct bus stop checks, visit transit centers, ride buses, and meet the bus operators to provide them support. You'll see later in the presentation that this increase of bus team activity has had a considerable impact on crime. You'll also see by the data on the screen that their activity has increased dramatically since last fiscal year. Outreach for homeless has decreased, but this is because our homeless outreach team, which I just talked about before, is now responding to the scene to assist these individuals in need. Our K-9 program, which we're always very proud to display. Our K-9 program is a regional asset certified by the TSA National Explosion K-9 Team Program. You can see by the bullet points, they are incredibly active and have a lot of work to do, and they do amazing work. They specialize in explosive detection and are deployed not only to our system, but also major critical incidents and major events like Comic-Con and the Super Bowl. And they'll actually fly out to the Super Bowl to support them in their mission, keeping people safe there. It's amazing work. So this is our team. And you'll see one in the middle who doesn't have a K-9. That's CCI Pedroza, our newest selection for K-9 handler. It is exciting and impressive, the training she is currently undergoing. CCI Pedroza is currently in the process of an 11-week training program delivered by the TSA in San Antonio, Texas, where she'll be paired with her new K-9 partner very soon. She's approximately 3 weeks into the program and learning something new every day. After graduation, the team will return to MTS, go through additional training and ongoing testing. We want to thank TSA for their support, and we want to thank CCI Pedroza for her dedication and for the excitement that she brings. She's going to bring in the dedication she's going to bring to MTS. We also can't wait to meet her K-9 partner. We also love Aska and Apex up there as well. We also gained a really good relationship with them. They're amazing dogs. They do amazing things. Data-driven crime reduction efforts, and this is something that we've really developed over the last couple of years. Our crime analyst provides actionable information to make positive impacts on the system. So monthly crime data meetings are conducted to discuss crime trends. Bi-monthly meetings with personnel from bus and rail divisions are conducted to share information about criminal activity. Our analyst also collaborates with crime analysts from all agencies and share information to learn from each other's craft. Data-driven strategies, external and internal collaboration, patron reporting, and other actionable information are all important to strategically deploy our passenger safety teams, our ridership experience details, our best teams, and our overall placement of personnel. This is our local law enforcement, and our system runs through multiple cities, universities, and other law enforcement jurisdictions. Since our CCIs and TSOs have been very limited authority, we do not have peace officer powers. We cannot deal with felonies, drug activity, major crimes, violent crimes. We really rely on their support and for them to respond, and they help us. We have a great partnership with our law enforcement partners, and we just want to thank them because we really could not function without them. They do an amazing job. Our communication center. You talk about folks who can do multitasking and have a lot of things on their plate. This is a critical part of our operation and a very difficult job. You can see our calls for service and text reports have increased significantly. The contributing factor to this is because we have made it easier for patrons to report crimes through text. We have improved technology and additional personnel, and we have additional personnel in the field to respond to issues. You can also see our dispatchers are constantly dealing with calls ranging from crimes in progress to medical aids. They collaborate with other emergency dispatch centers regularly to ensure that those who need help get help. Dispatch centers from law enforcement, fire, and medical are very responsive, and they really do enjoy sharing their knowledge with our dispatchers. We appreciate them greatly. Fair inspections and citations for fiscal year. You can see fair inspections have gone up 47%, notice to appear 104%. A big reason for that is the increased number of CCIs now in the field based on the increase of staffing, as well as the revised fair compliance efforts initiated on February 1st, 2025. Special enforcement detail. So since February 1st, 2025, we've conducted 17 special enforcement details, which is our 100% fair inspection details and provide an accurate sample of our fair evasion progress. From February 1st through July 31st, our average fair evasion rate is 12.36%. And though this is a very small sample, it appears we're going in the right direction. You also see we have 400 outreach services provided during these, because we have a lot of people taking advantage of it, and our hot team is available all the time during these events. I'm going to pass this on to Samantha Leslie.
Hello, I'll just try to briefly go through some stats on the diversion program, and I'll transfer it back to Dan to complete the annual security agenda item. So background on the fair enforcement diversion program, valid fare is required to use our services. And if MTS security finds you without a valid fare, they are trained to issue a fare evasion citation. During that fare evasion contact, they are trained to provide the citation in a diversion program envelope. And on this diversion program envelope, it's a pamphlet and a way to hold the citation, and it provides information on how to complete diversion, a payment form, and it's in English and Spanish, and they're also verbally explaining how the diversion program works. And as you can see on the screen, there's 4 options on how to resolve your fare evasion citation administratively in-house with MTS. And if you complete one of these options within 120 days, the citation is completely wiped, resolved, no additional steps, never goes to court. If an individual chooses not to complete diversion within 120 days, the citation is sent to court. As Karen mentioned in the last meeting, we also will work with individuals who try to and want to still complete diversion late. We'll do motion to dismiss this to the court if the court hearing date hasn't happened, or we'll forward them to the San Diego Public Defender's Office and or the homeless court if the citation has already gone to the court and missed the hearing date. So how is diversion going? As you may know, we made some changes as of February 1st to the diversion program. Since February 1st, it's still very new. We only have 3 months of full data of citations that have had at least 120 days to go through the diversion. So this program is still very new. We're definitely still tracking these numbers. But as you can see, effective February 1st, we did have a significant increase in the number of people participating in diversion. We think it's most likely because of the board's addition of the one-time waiver. That is definitely the highest used way to use the diversion program right now. It's very easy to do it. You can do it in person, but most people are doing online, really quick form. And so that's really helping to increase the numbers, we think. We're hoping it's going to not only maintain at 13%, but we're hoping it keeps inching. We saw some great numbers in April. And so we're wanting to see that continue. The second used option is the reduced fine. We're seeing people using the online option a lot, as well as in-store at the transit store, or in person at the transit store. And again, May is highlighted here in an asterisk because when we did the data in September 11th, many of the May sites still had 120 days to complete. So we're hoping those numbers continue to increase with time. Partner outreach, as you may recall from the last Public Security Committee meeting, we wanted to figure out ways to keep maintaining these good numbers and increase the participation numbers. And one of the ways we thought is, what partnerships can we enter into to help get the word out about the diversion program? And so we've had 3 meetings that we will continue to kind of evaluate and see how we can kind of make potentially these partnerships a more permanent part of our diversion program. So we met with the Homeless Court program, and they recommended that we evaluate and see how we can, as Karen mentioned earlier, potentially join in at these pop-up events that they do at least monthly. They're like resource fairs, and various vendors are there to assist individuals experiencing homelessness with services and help them do certain items and tasks. And so one idea could be, well, could MTS have a booth there? And so we'll be evaluating, working with them, what that could actually look like. Is it providing information on how to register for a Pronto Pass? Is it information on the diversion program? And so we'll be looking further with the Homeless Court program and seeing how that could look. We also met with the County Office of Homeless Solution. And as I mentioned earlier at the last agenda item, they wanted to test out a flyer that they would issue and include in certain hygiene kits. So this last month, they put out 100 of these flyers that you'll see on the slide into the hygiene kit. And we're supposed to kind of check back in to see if they got any feedback, if that was helpful, useful for individuals, and whether or not we can continue that in other hygiene kits or in other ways that they can show this flyer. And then lastly, we did speak with the mobile crisis response team. At their initial phase, they're meeting people in moments of crisis. So maybe talking about diversion at those moments aren't the most effective way, but we kind of really focused on case managers. Eventually they're assigned to case managers. And so they wanted to look at, well, could we give this flyer to the case managers or explain the diversion program to the case managers so they can then explain to their clients how the diversion program works, what are the options, and we can see if that could be a potential partnership and tool. So we're going to be evaluating how that could look like.
And I just want to jump in here. One of the things that, again, we want people to take advantage of the community service options. We represent the additional challenges with the homeless population and the issues that they're going through. And we understand kind of one of the tenets of some of the Homeless Court things is just getting people in the door and getting them to kind of accept services and take a step. And that really goes a long way to, it might be a very long process, but if you get them to kind of have touch points with the system and the services, that's a good thing. And so, we would like to, but we just really haven't gotten in yet of like case managers or other people, like we're willing to say that community service counts if you just make an appointment with your case manager, or if there's an appointment that somebody wants you to do, we're willing to work with case managers for them to basically say, hey, this person did this. And then we could count that as the community service sufficient to, satisfy a citation. And so kind of long range, we're hoping we can get people to take advantage of that idea. And that then it's just you're participating with your case manager. And so then that counts. But so far, I think people are so busy with everything that they're doing that we just haven't gotten anyone to like really jump on that idea. But that's one of the areas we'd like to get to.
And this is just a slide on fare revenue. One of the main goals of the diversion program was to offer that non-criminal path to resolve these citations for fares. But the other goal is to just incentivize individuals to buy a fare prior to using our services and not potentially risk it. You can see here the comparison from 2024 to 2025. There is an increase in revenue. We do believe that some of that potentially maybe up to 500,000 each month could be attributable to the increased fare enforcement measures and the changes to diversion. And with that, I'll transfer it back to Dan.
And I'll just follow up. I double checked with our finance team to kind of understand those numbers in case we had questions. And, it's not purely like trending up before this. We were actually down on fare revenue. So while we do have some additional fare revenue from ridership and those things, finance, like through the formulas that they create, do attribute about $500,000 of revenue a month since February as being attributable increased kind of fare compliance, as opposed to, so even though those numbers, it's not just 488, it's over the last year, but trending before that, we might've been $100,000 or $200,000 down. So.
So earlier in this presentation, we focused heavily on the fiscal year data, as well as the efforts since February 1st. Next set of data will be looking at calendar year crime rate year to date. NIBRS is a national incident-based reporting system data collected by law enforcement agencies on the calendar year basis for the FBI UCR reporting program, providing detailed incident level information to the entire year to measure crime rates. In order to maintain uniformity, we model that. However, we're not a law enforcement agency, but we model that. And also, I'll talk a little bit about before, every city that we go through has their crime data, and that includes MTS crime data that occurs on our system if they make a crime report or make an arrest. The following data that we'll be going through January through August 2025 is as compared to January through August 2024. A full year set of data will be completed at the end of the calendar year. And also, it must be noted that we document all crimes in the system, even if law enforcement doesn't show up or unable to come because they're busy. We want to make sure we have an accurate assessment of the crime that's going on in our system. Start off here with assaults. We make a comparison January 20 through August 2024, January through August 2025. You can see that we've had a marginal a decrease since those 2 years. This data includes CCIs, security, bus and trolley operators, as well as other support personnel along with citizens or patrons. An interesting note is our increase in assaults on our CCIs and TSOs. We've had from this year about a 41% increase, which is a considerable amount. The largest increase has been to our CCIs. This increase is likely due to our more CCIs in the field, our increased fare compliance efforts, and our increased data-driven crime reduction strategies. Their job is very difficult, and they encounter resistance and violent situations regularly. And as a reminder, they are unarmed. Our TSOs also have a difficult job as well, and have a limited authority. They also encounter violence and become victims of crime. Non-compliant arrests, we've seen about a 9% increase. This includes physical non-compliance resulting in simple handcuffing, delaying or obstructing a public officer, CCIs intervening on crimes in progress or acts of assault. TSOs are also highly visible and often witness crimes in progress where they have to intervene and choose to effect a citizen's arrest. So this is kind of where we are right now, and this gives you a little snapshot of the trolley. As we discussed new efforts in crime reduction strategies and increased staffing, the MTS board's overall approval of increased staffing has increased our presence on the system. And our presence really is our greatest ally. People feel safe when they see our folks on the system. People who are about to conduct any sort of criminal activity are deterred when they see our folks on the system. And I think it's really having an impact. Year-to-date, trolley crime has reduced 15%. You also see that assaults are up on the trolley. However, this data includes the increase on CCIs and TSOs. The board recently approved our ability to arrest for simple assault, which assists us considerably when CCIs witness a battery and law enforcement is unable to respond. our next set of data is bus, and you can see this is very encouraging. Overall, bus crimes have reduced, and this is year to date. Make sure this is not a full year. It's about 8 months worth of data. The doubling of the bus team, implementing 24-hour coverage and being directed and addressing quality of life issues on bus stops and on buses that contributed to this decrease. You'll see the batteries on buses has decreased about 64%. An overall picture, this is great news, and we want to thank our local law enforcement for helping us and supporting us in this. We really need them. Obviously, this is about an 8-month sample, agreed, and it's encouraging. We also want to try to keep this momentum moving, because we know crime rates can change and increases can happen based on many different factors. We are committed to pay attention to this, analyze it, and trying to address it to the fullest scope of our abilities. We are always striving to get better. I know we have a lot of improvement to do, and I think everyone knows that we are improving. We're getting better every single day. We want to serve all of our patrons of the system with fairness, kindness, and compassion. Recently, we received the TSA Gold Standard Award. This is the highest level of recognition from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Transportation, Security Administration, for achieving top scores in security, emergency preparedness, and resilience. We were one of 2 transit agencies nationwide to receive this recognition in 2024. This award is the result of the MTS Transit Security and Passenger Safety team, our amazing IT department efforts, and the MTS board's investment and commitment to increasing safety on our system. And thank you, Councilmember Dillard, for being present during that award ceremony. We appreciated that. This is last slide. It's the last slide that shows what we're delivering to our CCIs. To remind them what they stand for, what they strive for, and how important public safety is, and public service as well. If we fail to the public or we falter in our mission, we have to be responsible enough to recapture this message. We bring courtesy, compassion, kindness, and professionalism everywhere we go. We bring calm to every encounter and every scene. We never bring chaos. We are unbiased and fair in every situation. We are polite and patient, even in the face of anger and or insult. We leave a positive impression when the public watches us. We hold ourselves accountable to our core values and to public expectations. We are public servants. I'd be happy to answer any questions or bring up some of our subject matter experts to answer questions as well.
Thank you very, very much for the presentation. You should do voiceovers. Your voice is like calm. I want to see if there's any, are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this item?
No public comment, Chair.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's go to board members. We'll go to Vice Chair Goble.
Thank you, Chair. Good, thorough presentation. Thank you all. Let's go to slide 11. How do you know where how do you know where to deploy your resources for these things? We had stats of at the end of how many arson, vandalism, assault, robbery. How do you know where to go to be most effective?
So we have a crime analyst, Josh Ortiz. He's actually right back here, and his sole job is to daily track what crimes or what trends we have on the system. And it's tracked through not only reading every crime report or every report that our folks make, but also watching CCTV video to make sure that it occurred, aggregating that all together and finding if it's a trend, also looking at citizen complaints and seeing if we have any issues that are constantly reoccurring. And in that way, when we don't respond to simple group, we respond solely for criminal activity, and that can be through, we suddenly have an increase in drug activity. We suddenly have an increase in lewd acts. We have an area where we're having people who are maybe congregating and a lot of vandalism occurring. So those are the areas, and that's all actionable information. It's not subjective. So at least this gives us an opportunity to either deploy our passenger safety team to pay a little bit more attention to that and bring that issue down.
Are those things geotagged to say this event happened on this bus or this trolley between this stop and this stop?
Yes, we are actually developing more and more throughout the law enforcement agencies and using things like Power BI and understanding exactly where that system, how that system works. And I'd be more than happy to bring my analyst up here to give you a little bit more information.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I know we're trying to race to a 11 o'clock deadline, so I'll skip that one. Slide 13.
That's good because he's very passionate about it. It could go on.
Yes, he loves it.
Slide 13, please. This is great. Look at that yellow sign. By the way, having been in marketing my career, black letters on yellow background is the easiest color combination for the eye to see. There it is. What is your eye drawn to? The yellow panel. It's the biggest letters, call or text this number. I think that's why you show 46,633 calls for service. Did we have to add any communication center operators, or were they able to handle the increased?
It's a great thing you're asking that. We're actually developing our staff right now. We're actually employing more permanency there and increasing our staff. We have more, our supervisors are becoming far more specialized. And I can tell you, we can sing our supervisors praises. They have developed this program. We actually in the past have put our supervisors through the post dispatch academy to really professionalize them. We meet with fire to make sure that it's a far more seamless transition when we have medical aid calls. So they're doing an outstanding job.
Let's go to slide 16, please. Do you have, could you provide us, that's 15, one more. Could you provide us locations of the 17
Yes.
details that you've done?
Yes.
That'd be great. Okay, thank you. Slide 20. We talked about this a little bit in the last meeting. Some of these things, partner outreach, are to deal with homeless, but I think there are people who are fare evaders who are not homeless. And I want to make sure that we reach them to have an opportunity to clear their record of things. I'd say the word transit court. Because if I was a fare evader and I'm not homeless, I'm going to say, this isn't for me. So somehow we need to make that connection of naming or something like that. I think, frankly, in my youth, I did have a problem with my credit. It hung around for a long time over a dumb piece of furniture that I bought that I fell behind on the payments, and it was on my credit report forever. But if you go to one of these events, we have the ability to clear your record a lot faster than a credit bureau can clear your record. So I think that has a lot of value. Number 21. Slide 21, I just got one more. Annualized 2.8 million of those numbers comes out to 6.8 million increased. Now we know that the extra CCIs cost us about $4 million. So that was a good decision because they have paid for themselves and provided more value to the system. That was a good decision. They're performing as we hoped, and we thank them for getting this kind of revenue. Not only that, but what doesn't show is the cost that we have avoided for vandalism, arson, even crimes against people such as robbery. Because of their presence, robbery is down 24%. So it's not only 2.8 million for those 5 months, 6.8 million annualized, but the untold cost that we have avoided to deal with arson, vandalism, and impact on humans, such as serious violent crimes. So our CCI program has been more than I think what we hoped for. Good job. That's all.
That was great. It's a loose deadline, but thank you for acknowledging it. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again for the work and presentation. Very much appreciated. And I do agree with my colleague Goebel that having more presence has probably led us to the place where individuals know that there are going to be checks, and as a result have to make sure that they purchase a ticket, which is great. I do have a question though. Have you heard of the broken windows theory? Of course you have. You just summarized really brief in case some of us are not aware of it.
Broken window theory is if you you let one thing happen, it'll build upon itself and become exponentially worse if you don't take.
So if there's a broken window
Yeah.
on a building and it doesn't get fixed, it'll get worse. And other folks will, in society, will simply accept that nobody cares about the building. And as a result, you can break another window and then you can tag on it and then you can do whatever you want to the building itself. That's the same thing with this. And I say that because as we're thinking of MTS holistically, we have to make sure that we have a presence to make sure that individuals feel safe riding the trolley. And at the same time, where there is more usage of our trolley system, those issues that come up like tagging, like cleanliness, have to be addressed immediately. So along with this, I would love to see a report on, kind of what our responses to some of those incidents that occur and how quickly they're dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Dillard.
I've got 60 seconds. Just very quickly, I want to say thank you to not just this presentation, but all of the staff that you mentioned. Overall, this is a great report. And I especially addressed the last time when we talked about your, beefing up the implicit bias, anti-discrimination. And I want to thank you for listening to me about that and the 1,000 cuts a day. I understand that some people don't even get that. And if you're not Black or brown, it's really hard to understand or get it because you don't even recognize it if you were in the presence of someone who's receiving those cuts. And so I want to commend you on that and let you know that all through this presentation, there's like a lot of different items where we see progress, and you all need to be commended on that. This is an excellent report. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I would agree with that. Just having sat on this board for 6 years, I think this is probably my 7th. We've been through we've had a lot of conversations around public security. There have been a lot of changes, but I think every single time the department really has stepped up and staff has as well, just to try to help us navigate all the nuances that occur on the line that we may or may not know about. And, I was a more frequent writer before COVID, but I have writers on my staff that really helped me to understand as well. So I really appreciate it. Congratulations on the award. That's a big deal. So I just want to highlight that again. I want to highlight the decrease in vandalism, the 58% decrease. We talked about presence of CCIs, but also there's the aftermath of, not having to go back and clean those types of things up and use our resources to do so. And then how that factors into the overall reduction in crime on the line. I think that's big. We've been working on lighting, we've been working on murals, we've been working on all of those things. And I really truly believe that holistic approach has gotten us where we are. So thank you very, very much. Thank you for this report. I don't see anyone else wishing to say anything. So we will then move to the next item, which is committee member communications or other business. Anybody have any updates that this committee needs to know about? Okay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you for really another good and productive meeting. Our next meeting will be on December 5th, 2025 at 10 a.m. I'm still planning on having that meeting unless you all hear otherwise. I think we'll have other items that we'll need to discuss. And so until then, I will see you. This meeting is adjourned at 11:02. Thank you.